Hello, our lovely Smart Living community. Today I am joined by the wonderful Gerard Evans, who, among many things, is a journalist, I think a punk rocker, singer, songwriter, does lots of wonderful things, runs the podcasts and posts for Zen23, and is a mindfulness writer and has recently published a book called The Turning Point. So he's going to share some wonderful tips with us today about his journey, and just looking forward to getting stuck in really, Gerard. So hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Paula.
Great to have you here.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It's nice to be here. Yes.
Okay, so let's start out with, how did it all begin? Tell us about it, Alfie, as they say.
Yeah, Cilla Black, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's all about Alfie.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about sort of this kind of onion skin thing before, and so as I sort of unfold more kind of onion layers away and how I think about how it all began, I sort of seem to be coming up with different answers as I'm having the courage to sort of know more about myself than I did really. So here's my latest version of how it all began, is that I didn't have a very happy adolescence. I was really happy till like at sort of junior school, if it's still what it's called, and then I went to secondary school and it was an absolute nightmare. The school was terrible, and I didn't have a very smooth journey through puberty, I don't think. Not anything medical, It wasn't an easy time for me. So for instance, I went to my secondary school as Oxbridge material and I left with 2 O-levels, so you can see it kind of didn't go very well, and I was deeply unhappy. And then I carried on this unhappiness and very low self-esteem as well. And if we skip forward a little bit, then the first time I ever fell in love was with a woman who was who I was deeply in love with, but was incredibly suicidal and clearly meant it. It wasn't this sort of cliche of the cry for attention and so on. So 10 years of trying to save her life, and then eventually failing when she did kill herself. All of this kind of gave me quite a lot of unhappiness, and the way I dealt with that, I didn't deal with it truthfully, but the way I reacted to that was heavy drinking, and I'd say it was heavy drinking really. Obviously, as you don't need telling, that didn't make it go away. It just temporarily pushed things under the floorboards, and when things go under the floorboards, they get worse, don't they? They don't even stay the same. So all this kind of informed my life really, I suppose. The only way I knew how to deal with uncomfortable emotions and so on and so forth was to block them out really, usually through alcohol. I'd say. And so eventually this led to me having diabetes, to being diagnosed with diabetes about 15 years ago, something like that. I'd also tried meditation, incidentally, right through since the 80s. But when I look back on it, it was very superficial what I was doing. There wasn't really a proper understanding of what I was doing, and so I wasn't really feeling the astonishing benefits I do now. So got diagnosed with diabetes, which didn't result in any kind of change of lifestyle for me really, because I was self-medicating the only way I still knew how.
Alright, okay.
And when you're diabetic, you go for an eye test each year to see if you're going to have problems with your eyesight, because of course one of the horror stories about diabetes is going blind. So I went a few years back for my normal eye test, and they said there was bleeding behind the eyes, and it kind of frightened the life out of me really. I was very scared of the potential that had, and I didn't know whether that was even reversible or whether it was just something that was too late. It is reversible. I've since stopped having bleeding behind the eyes, but that's a very long-winded way of getting around to saying it was at that point that I thought I've got to start taking this relaxation stuff seriously.
Yeah.
That this is a real fork in the road moment for me. So I thought, okay, how do you relax? Meditation. Went onto YouTube, sort of did some guided meditations. That was the first time I didn't even know guided meditations existed. I honestly thought meditation was just sitting there without any noise and relaxing. Such was the level of my inexperience. However, because I was taking these things seriously, it made I got a lot more out of it than I ever had done previously from books and so on.
Yeah.
Because of course that was all before the internet. And I was talking to a friend of mine who meditated, and he said, "There's this book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle," and he said you should read it. And I read it, and I found it quite mind blowing.
Yeah.
And it's quite weird because a little while later I realised I'd actually read it before, and nothing had gone in at all. So
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I had to be ready for it.
Perfect.
And then I was ready for it, and I thought, oh, this is pretty mind blowing stuff. And so I read some of the books, and then I did an 8-week mindfulness course with Jon Wilde, who I'm now teaching things with. So the 8-week mindfulness course really kind of like put in a lot of techniques, whereas Eckhart Tolle's stuff was all very kind of fascinating and so on. There was still an element of the cerebral.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't
existential.
There wasn't particularly an experience there apart from the experience of nodding my head, going, "Wow, that's incredible," But the course actually kind of put me in the story, put me on the page rather than just being the reader.
Yeah.
So that kind of the combination of that little period really of getting really properly into meditation, and then the Eckhart Tolle books, and then the mindfulness course, was an absolute enormous moment in my life, and I just felt profoundly rescued.
Beautiful.
Really.
So what I'm hearing you say, just to get it clear, is that you had the intellectual wow from the books, and then you did this 8-week course, and it started to sit in you as the experience, so it became more alive, more real.
Yeah, it became
more attainable, actually, which is a really good word, because a lot of people who I work with who'll be listening today, have this little idea, oh, well, it's not for me, I wouldn't be able to attain that,
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to go to the gym in Brighton, and one of my favourite hangouts in the gym was the sauna. Once I'd sort of done my exercise chores, and I used to love it in there, except when the yoga class in the gym had finished, and all these women, it was all women, and not that was an issue obviously, but all these women would pile in the sauna, and I just had to leave because I found them so irritating. And the tragedy of this is that I thought I could really get quite into yoga, and I probably need something like that, but not at the expense of mixing with people like that. So I had this kind of terrible snobbery, inverted snobbery about the kind of people who do this sort of thing. So therefore, it's not for me.
Right. Okay.
And that's a real shame, because it probably but it probably made me years later to the party than I might have otherwise been.
Okay.
I've lost my train of thought a bit there.
So these, how would you describe then, if there was traits of personality, what would the yogic personality be that put you off journeying more quickly, if you like?
Right. Yes.
On the page.
I had this kind of cliche in my mind of yoga type people being very airy fairy and being very superficial, and what's that phrase? Spiritual bypassing.
Right. Okay.
Where it's not actually about doing the work. It's about being seen to be looking like you're doing the work,
Okay, it's interesting.
And this kind of whole sort of how do I put it? I'm not comfortable with this because I don't think it makes me sound very good, but but I just there seems to be a very lack of earthiness amongst all these people, a lack of things I could relate to.
Okay, so you just needed that golden nugget, that sort of somewhere to hang your hat and go, okay, I see myself in this, so I can, it's familiar, so I can become part of it, because that's important to us, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned before that I got recommended the Eckhart Tolle book by this bloke who was into meditation. Well, that bloke he was sort of working class guy, he'd been a builder, he'd actually kind of gone on and run his own business and got very successful since then. But when I saw that he was into it, much to my surprise, because it wasn't how I knew him, I just thought, well, if he can do it,
so can I, type of thing.
This is cool, so I've got a lot to thank him for as well. Gary Marshall, for the record, I should name check people who help. So that's kind of when I realised it was for me. Everything changed, and I just felt this profound sense of coming home. I felt something deep inside that I knew I hadn't felt since being a child, and it was a really beautiful feeling. And it wasn't a memory of being a child or anything like that. It was just something I knew that I hadn't felt for an awful long time since the trauma of secondary school started, really. And it was just an astonishing feeling to think that.
So you've got this beautiful, profound understanding, because it's a feeling now, so it's become an experience. So it's gone from intellectual to the heart.
So
it gives you something to buy into. So, what's the next step? Here you are with, you're moving from this unknown, this known way of being into this new journey. How did that evolve?
I have always had a sort of yearning to sort of make the world a better place. I'm not sure I've always done that, but I've always wanted to do that. That kind of goes back to watching Blue Peter, and when they used to do the Christmas appeals and there'd be like children starving in Africa. And I was absolutely shocked, because I mean, even at a very young age I realised there was enough to go round. And it just was being kept from some people, even to the point where they starved to death. And so I always wanted to sort of make the world a better place by replacing that kind of thing with something a bit better. And then when I was in my sort of angry punk rock years, I was kind of for instance involved in organising something called Stop the City, which was the first anti-capitalist demonstration, of which there have been many since, really. That was in 1983 in London. So there was always these ideas about changing the world. I was also very taken with the hippies in Haight-Ashbury, with the idea that those people wanted to make the world a nicer place, and they seemed an awful long way away, both geographically and also in other ways, but how all that kind of played out when I got really into meditation was I could, if I can get into teaching this, then I can help people to get where I am, and just in terms of the change that's happened to me, to the peace that I've discovered. That's what it was. It was peace.
Beautiful,
and it was really quite I don't know, I'm going to sound like a scratch record here, but it was just really profound, and it was really beautiful. And I thought, I would really love to be able to take these techniques that I've learned and share them with other people, and in a teaching capacity, but also, of course, just on a day-to-day level as well.
I mean, in the Course in Miracles says every situation is a teaching and learning situation, and I think it's important to recognise that. So we're always teaching and we're always learning, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. It's not like the authority of the teacher student you get at school. I think it is a sort of, here's something I've learned, and people can have their opinions, or they can say, here's something I've learned, or whatever, and we all move forwards together. I'm very keen on that kind of take on it, really, that it's not about hierarchies, It's not about authorities. We're all in it together, and when we can all help each other.
Yeah, so you've got all of this inspiration, you've done the practice, and now you're starting to teach. So take us to where you started to teach and how that sort of showed up. And
Well, I wanted to teach immediately. I learned.
Okay, cool.
But I was nervous of doing that because I didn't have qualifications, and I wasn't sure if I could have the credibility without qualifications, really. Ironically, now I have qualifications, I know I didn't need them.
Yeah.
There's the irony, isn't it? Once you can sort of like relax and think, okay, I'm covered on that front, I think. I mean, I'm not decrying the qualifications.
No, of course
out,
not.
But you know, I thought, I could have just started immediately. Really, you know.
Yeah.
Does anybody else get Cartolli if he's qualified with anybody? I don't think so. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a bit kind of nervous to start. So what I started doing firstly was interviews like this.
Right.
Me interviewing people, just to sort of try and get a bit more knowledge, and also, you know, trying to just connect with people who were more versed in this world that I was very new to. So the first interview I did was Jon Wilde, who I now also run the Mindfulness Centre with, and he was, at that point, he was about to walk around Britain as the mindful pilgrim.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, his idea was to kind of walk around Britain and just live in a tent and teach mindfulness to whoever wanted it, wherever they wanted it. And as me and Jon got to know each other better, we had the idea of writing a book together and setting up a centre in Brighton. And
just for the listeners, the centre in Brighton is called?
It's Brighton Mindfulness Centre.
Right.
Yes. Somewhat obviously.
Yeah.
Not obviously, but you know, unimaginatively. No.
Yeah.
But so Jon was going to do all that, but to cut a long story short, we ended up doing this instead, really. So me and Jon kind of do the Brighton Mindfulness Centre together, which is like courses, and we're also just about to start selling kind of meditation packs aimed at specific things. So there's one for if you can't sleep, there's one for if you want to give up smoking, and all that kind of jazz, really.
Yeah, yeah.
One for bereavement. Just basically little kind of helpful packs to help people in specific situations that they struggle with.
Okay.
And we all struggle, and it's just quite interesting what you were saying about teaching and learning as well. I think because in putting these packs together, I'm learning so much.
Yeah, and the thing is, the day we stop learning, there's something probably wrong. We're always learning, aren't we?
Yeah, and learning feels good.
Yeah.
I think again because I didn't have a very good time at secondary school. It took me a while to relearn that learning was good, really, because I spent a lot of time looking out the window or standing outside the classroom or whatever at that point, and got some quite negative triggers, I guess. But learning is fantastic and makes me feel alive. So, for instance, the one we done about sleeping better, we do a bit of research into these kind of things,
of course.
and as well as the meditations, we do a PDF with lots of actual practical stuff, and I'm learning all sorts. Did you know coffee stays in your system for like 7 hours or something?
I did, yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't, you see, and that's the thing. And now I do, and so teaching and learning, fantastic experience in both levels, really.
Yeah, brilliant. So let's say I'm, at the beginning of my journey, and I, am looking at being awake to new ideas of mindfulness, to new ideas and ways of living. If you were going to say to me in a nutshell, some key, like golden nuggets, if you like, what would it be that would sort of make me really think, step on that road, let's take that journey? This type of things that you did, the ideas in your mind.
Yeah.
Because you've had the success of it. You've come out the other side. So let's, learn from that behaviour.
Okay. The first thing I would say is if you need a convincer, then there's a couple of things really. You you can listen to people like me or John, for instance, and both of us came from a reasonably sceptical point of view, and it changed my life. I was reasonably sceptical about its ability to. You can choose to believe that or not, obviously, but then your friend is Google as well. There's so much science now that is backing up all the claims that have been made over the years.
Yeah.
And particularly since the year 2000, if you look at all the scientific research sources, they're all pretty much 2000 onwards.
Sure.
So if you've ever kind of rejected it in the 80s or the 90s or whatever, things have changed, you know. So the first thing I'd say is, if you're not convinced, just check out Google. Just Google mindfulness science research or something like that, and that will convince you that this stuff actually really does work. Then the second thing I would say is it's experiential. It's absolutely essential to experience this early on. It's not a box ticking exercise, but that is the danger, is that you buy a book about something, you read it, buy a book about mindfulness, put it on the shelf next to the book about NLP or the book about yoga or whatever, and then buy a book about something else, and you haven't really kind of got on board properly.
Yeah.
Because this stuff does take, I was going to say it takes work, but I don't like that connotation really. It takes
effort,
application.
Application, good word.
Yeah. So meditation, it is absolutely meditation based. I know there's people claiming that you don't need to meditate, but I can't see that on any level. I do believe you have to meditate, and you should look forward to meditation as well. Meditation should be a nice, fun time. I think nobody, for instance, nobody sort of says, "Oh no, I've got to sleep tonight," do they? You know, it's something that you do, and it helps, and in fact, it keeps you alive, as indeed does meditation in many cases. So, I think it's important to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you know, that involves becoming your own best friend if you're not already.
Yeah.
Which was a big part of my journey. The journey from just being on autopilot and trying to block out unwanted emotions with alcohol and so on and so forth. The journey from that to loving myself and being compassionate enough with myself to be able to say, you know, meditate. You're gonna like this, and also you're gonna feel better for it. So why not? You know, it's all about getting off autopilot.
Yeah.
And getting into making decisions. I think.
But it's a bit like, you know, we get up every day, brush our teeth, we do things.
I was
you
about
know.
to say brushing our teeth.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's that routine, isn't it? And as you say, it when it benefits you so much, you want to do it. In fact, it would be strange not to do it. You know, you'd miss it. So it's really carving it, not even necessarily carving it into your day. I wanted to talk to you about that because, of course, it's a 24/7 game.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. This isn't a hobby that you do at the weekends.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it could be, but it's not going to be best experienced as that, I think. This is something that you fold into your whole life. Yeah, it's a bit like going to the gym. Really, the meditation is going to the gym, but the benefits of the fitness are all day.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also, like going to the gym, don't expect to like lose 3 stone overnight. You know, you do have to sort of keep at it for a little while.
Strengthening your attitudinal muscles, basically, your neural pathways. Really.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, and science is backing this up all the time as well, of course. Yeah, the more we concentrate on something, the wider the neural pathways in our brain get. Sort of they turn from side roads to A roads to motorways, and that can be for good or bad, of course.
So we got the convincers, get the knowledge, we got the meditation, get the practice in, and we're, you know, sort of the living it.
Living it is the real reward,
yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Living it is the absolute reward. I think that's when I was saying that kind of sense of peace and so on. That the real reward, the ultimate reward for me is now I feel like not invincible. That's the wrong way of putting it, but a bit like, say, if I was Spider-Man walking down the street, Spider-Man wouldn't worry about muggers.
Yeah.
And I don't worry about life's events mugging me anymore, because it's not that they're not going to come along. But now I know so much more about how to react skillfully. The book, Mark Williams and Danny Penman have got a great way of putting it. It's a bit like driving a car and all of a sudden getting an extra gear or two on your gearbox.
Okay, nice, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just a great feeling. And so
interestingly, can I pick up on something
please
here?
do, yeah.
Because you keep mentioning peace, and yet you're talking about invincible. You're talking about can do anything. So, one of the things that I experience with the practice is aliveness. And I just wonder if you could expand on that side, because a lot of people equate meditation and mindfulness with peacefulness. But wow, the awakefulness of life. Yeah?
Right, yeah. And I suppose being docile as well would be another thing people might associate it with if they're not into it. And it's not about that. It's very much a positive, lively thing. Yeah. It's not about talking in monotone and boring the tits off everybody down the pub or anything like that. It's you don't have to give up any part of yourself. You just discover more parts of yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Or rediscover them, perhaps, would be a better way of putting it. Because I do believe a lot of the things that come back to you are things that you have lost in the pressures of growing up and the real world kind of imposing itself on you in the form of bills or mortgages or quite a lot of money related things, but also all sorts of other things like people just being unpleasant or whatever.
Yeah.
So it is, I think it's a question of a return to innocence in that respect.
Beautiful.
And that's a really kind of, that's a really good feeling. It's not something that kind of makes you wear bells on your ankles, and it's not something that makes you sit at the top of mountains with your legs crossed necessarily. Yeah. It's just something that makes you feel great, and that can apply whether you're a bank manager or a soldier or a hippie or anything. Yeah, sure. I think. Feeling alive. The rewards are just astonishing. They're absolutely astonishing. But it starts at the beginning, like most things do, of course, doesn't it? It starts with just enjoying the little break you're getting. It feels like unclamping your head when you get into meditating. I think. Cool. Yeah. Or maybe you've been banging your head against the wall for 30 years, and suddenly you notice and you stop.
Brilliant. So would you recognise the Gerard of 20 years ago? If our reality creates our personality, to the Gerard of today?
Oh yeah. I recognise me. There may well be people out there who don't think I've changed at all.
Okay, cool. All right.
I haven't sort of started dressing differently or talking differently or anything like that.
Attitudinally, I meant more.
Yeah. I am different now, definitely in some respects. But I would recognise the Gerard of 20 years ago and just feel deeply sorry for him. Have a deep compassion for the unhappiness and the pressures and the not knowing what to do about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now I do know what to do about it more. It is quite important to point out here, I haven't turned into Spider-Man.
Yeah. But what would your power be if you could have one? Your superhero power?
Oh, to be able to fly.
To be able to fly. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, just jumped you off path there, but
Yeah, certainly better than having that thing that came out of his wrist and did the web. Really, I'd rather fly than that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So it's not about you don't turn into some kind of supernatural being or anything like that. You are just kind of equipped with a lot more tools to deal with the various things that life will continue to throw at you. But knowing that, and this is the sort of Spider-Man bit really, it's knowing that beforehand gives you such a sense of peace. I think it's like, say, if you're going to go for a job interview and deep down you're going to get it, you're not going to worry about it. But if deep down you think I'm not really qualified for this, you're going to worry about it. Yeah. It's that knowing you're going to get it bit. Yeah. I think, and that's been it's been life changing really. And you know what? Those women in the sauna. Yeah. I could probably talk to them quite happily now.
Yeah, of course you could. Yeah, it's like the book. The first time you read it, it didn't. You take the horse to the water, you can't make it drink, as they say.
Absolutely.
That power of now. The next time you were ready to receive, and there's something to be said about our readiness on this journey.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could expand on that for me.
I guess as you ask me that, I'm sort of thinking, okay, there's people listening to this because there's a microphone there and so on. So it's probably quite a different answer to if we were just talking on our own, I guess. Readiness, yeah. I mean, firstly, I would presume people have got a vague interest or something if they're listening to this. And I would say, I don't know, readiness. What do you think? I'm not sure.
Well, just, sort of, I think it's being gentle with yourself. So there might be part of you emerging that this is a good idea, but your personality today, maybe your friends will think it's weird and hippie. Maybe, you'll be almost segregating yourself as doing something different. You're not wearing the same leather jacket anymore. Type of thing.
No, of course, yeah. I mean, my wife thought it was all a bit weird.
Right, that's what I mean, really.
Yeah.
How do you sort of prepare yourself for, standing up to the challenges which can often come?
I think it's all to do with loving kindness. It's all to do with being your own best friend.
Yeah.
And it's also to do with being you. As Oscar Wilde famously said, everyone else is taken.
Yeah, I like that.
You don't have to, there's no performance involved here. You don't have to become some different person. You don't have to become somebody who is looked on as spiritual or who is looked on as wise or anything like that, really. This is very much your own personal thing, and it's not about outward appearances to other people. You're not under any obligation here, so you take it at your own speed.
Yeah.
I do remember once in a mindfulness group somebody being incredibly frustrated that they didn't think they were getting as far as everybody else. And that is such a fundamental mistake to make, because there is no competition.
Yeah.
It's all about you, and it's all about you being your own best friend. It's not about comparing yourself to anyone else, because comparison on any level is opposite to what we're trying to teach here, isn't it, really?
Sure.
In the way that you may well grow up thinking, I'd be happy if I had the kind of money that so and so's got, or I'd be happy if I could go on that holiday that I've just seen someone on Facebook, and all these other, I'd be happy if I was somewhere that isn't here, basically.
Well, as a musician, the 27 Club, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, these are people who appear to have it all and can often lose their life to a hit of happiness that wasn't on an inner plane. It was more about trying to find my happiness on the outside as opposed to cultivating it on the inside.
Yeah, and that's the profound shift, isn't it, I think, is when you realise that happiness isn't elsewhere. Happiness doesn't require that you do anything that you're not doing already. It doesn't require you being in a different physical place. It doesn't require you being different the way you act, even, in a way. It's just all about remembering that it's there in the first place.
Coming home to yourself.
Yeah.
And back to your true nature.
Yeah, and as such, of course, happiness is a split second away. But I suppose you do need to work on how you discover that, perhaps.
So blocks to happiness may well be addictions, depression, hurt, anger, isolation. Because even just in your story, you've brought up quite a few of these blocks.
Oh, absolutely,
to
yeah.
happiness.
I'm the poster boy for blocks, or at least I was. Yeah.
So, talk to me about how you removed some of these blocks. So you did your practice, but your inquiry around that to make these philosophical shifts, because I think it's important that people remember it's not just about sitting on the mat. It's about...
I haven't even got a mat.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean, yeah, of course.
It's also about the inquiry. I'm becoming familiar with not being on autopilot, so I'm choosing my responses. So talk me a bit through that.
Absolutely. I think it's a slow process. It was a slow process for me to come to this gradual awareness of that I had been on autopilot so much. One of the early practices I did in the mindfulness course was just brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
To go back to that, and the practice of brushing your teeth and only thinking about brushing your teeth, and being aware of the toothpaste, being aware of the toothbrush, being aware of how it feels on your gums and your teeth. And the way we normally do it, the way I would always have done it, would be brushing my teeth whilst thinking about, making 28 different plans about things, and perhaps with my other hand I'm sort of trying to do something else to save time, and maybe walking around the house, maybe watching telly. Just that single practice of brushing my teeth really taught me how to break the cycle of autopilot. So that was the first thing, I think. And then there's also turning towards difficulty, which was something else that really kind of broke my autocycle pilot.
So what
My
does that
autocycle
mean?
pilot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My autopilot cycle.
I meant turning toward difficulty. Expand on that. I knew the Good England was okay.
I was very scared of the sort of darker things that had happened in my life. I was scared of how they might make me feel, and I suppose I was scared, for instance, that if a woman you love kills herself, how the ultimate fear was, how's that going to affect me? What's it going to do to me? It made me sad as well, obviously, but there was an overriding emotion that I'd always kept away from, which was dealing with how I felt with it, and my inability to deal with unpleasant, dark aspects of my life.
The shadow,
yeah. My inability to deal with that sort of stuff was solved, or at least helped, by this new compassion I had for myself. And this compassion I had for myself took away the fear of the fear.
Okay.
And I think also it's really worth pointing out that nothing is ever as bad in real life as it is in your imagination. So when you bring things out of the shadow and into consciousness, they're never as bad as you fear they will be, because your fear always overcompensates for how bad something might be, I suppose, to keep you safe, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was just going to say, a lot of teachers say the only thing to fear is fear.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the key to that door for me was loving kindness towards myself, was knowing that it was okay, finally. It was okay to sort of feel a little bit of discomfort, but also to bring it into my body. That was quite revolutionary for me. So just very briefly, you sort of think about something quite dark, something you wouldn't normally want to think about, and you see whereabouts in your body you feel that. I didn't even know you could do that, and when I could, it was astonishing. I just thought, crikey, that's in my tummy. I'm actually feeling it in my tummy now, actually, as I bring it up in this chat. And I suppose that does two things. Firstly, it kind of brings you back into the moment, doesn't it? You're not kind of stuck in the fear of that thought or the fear of that memory. You are bringing yourself back into your body and back into the moment. And as you do that, you're also taking away its power, because you are going back into yourself. How does this affect me? Not why is it this all powerful dark thing, but how does it affect me? And to be able to do that with compassion is something that's had enormously profound effects. I'm finally healed of all the mental turmoil of that lady killing herself. Yeah. But it took me, actually, once I got into mindfulness, it's probably only taken me a couple of years, but I just absolutely failed to heal myself of that for almost 30 years previously. So I lived with all that kind of crap in my head, or in my heart, or in my cells.
Yeah. And Deepak Chakra says the cells are always listening, so we store everything that happens. And of course, there's a lot of field work at the moment that we bring, energy into us. So is it outside of us or in us? But just move away. But I want to just go back to what you've just said there, because I think it's really important. We've been brought up in this got to be breathlessly happy, or you're stressed or sad. So we've almost been indoctrinated to refuse our pain.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually to live a normal, full life, there is shadow and light, joy and pain. And yet we're almost sort of taught that, there's something wrong with us if we feel pain. There's something wrong with us if we feel hopelessness or desperation. And actually, it's an experience that mightn't be supportive to our well-being, but we're experiencing it. And it's because we push it at arm's length and say it's not part of us. Or we don't want it to be part of us. We give it power. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. We're taught that success is happiness, aren't we?
Yeah.
Whereas success actually, I think, is living a full life.
Absolutely, because you're not going to be stress-free if something dramatic happens.
No, happiness, a striving for 24/7 happiness necessarily involves an absolute fear of the realities of life, I think.
Yeah.
And so it just doesn't work. That's the thing.
Absolutely not. And so that time you just felt that pain in your body, you could almost care for it. I'm here for you, I'm not ignoring you anymore, I'm with you.
And it was a relief. It was a relief because it takes so much energy to suppress these things.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's exhausting suppressing pain, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely it is.
And we're hardwired to move towards pleasure and away from pain, of course, I suppose, but that's something that isn't, well, in the West we are, perhaps, maybe a better way of putting it. But yeah, pleasure is great, obviously, but it's only a part of things. Yeah, I think it takes a while to get your head around that, really.
Yeah, it takes
probably
a while.
Sounds a bit alien if you don't meditate, I think.
Taking a while to get your head around that it's okay to be with what is.
Yeah. At
all times.
Yeah. What is already is. So
that brings us to personal responsibility, really, I think. About our thoughts, about our feelings, about what we're doing. So, a lot of mindfulness, we're either catastrophizing about the future or ruminating about the past, and we're losing the present moment. So, I don't know, would you like to expand on that for us?
Yes, absolutely. You could be walking along the beach on a beautiful sunny day, and the sun's out and there's lots of people having a lovely time on the beach, and the sun's glistening off the sea, and you're feeling the sun on your skin, and everything is quite a great situation to be in, but you're not there because you are worried about what so-and-so said to you last night, or you're worried about that Facebook comment, or you're worried about a bill you have to pay, or you're worried about how things are going in your marriage, and so on and so forth. And all of those things fall into either the camp of history, which is already gone, or camp of the future, which doesn't exist. The future is only ever something in your imagination. So, as I believe it was Eckhart Tolle said, if you ask any animal in the jungle, what time is it? They look at you a bit weird and say, well, it's now, obviously. Yeah. Because what other time could it be? And so, the whole kind of skill that I think you learn through mindfulness and meditation is to spend more time in the present. So when you're brushing your teeth, you can practice that by brushing your teeth and not just sort of thinking about the past or the future, because as we've already said, these things are a muscle that can be developed, and the more you develop it, the better you get at it, and the more often you can do it. Yeah. Because there's no such thing as a problem in the present. Yes. All our problems are, again, either in the past or the future. Yeah. So the more time you can spend in the present, the less problem time you have.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, isn't it? Because this is one of the things that we don't actually realise when we're on autopilot, is that we're, the first arrow is the problem. Someone might have insulted me, and then all the rest of them are all what I tell myself about it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm continuing to promote the problem by getting indignant or upset or whatever it is. Whereas I have a choice. I could respond and just say, well, that's their opinion, not mine. Yeah. I'm going to keep my peace, like we said earlier, about holding the door open.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can also use physical pain sometimes as an example of that. We're sitting in my flat as we speak. As you can see, it's not very big, and I walk around in bare feet most of the time. Consequently means I stub my toe quite often. And when I used to stub my toe, it was a bit of a performance, and the performance was mainly in my head, of course. Oh, I've done it again. That hurts. Oh, what an idiot I am. I should have put my slippers on or whatever. And this goes on and on and on. And the pain kind of somehow seems to sort of like expand, like those dominoes that are knocking each other over and in those displays and so on. And so what's actually happening is that I've stubbed my toe. There's a little message gone from my toe to my brain saying this has happened, and it's kind of throbbing ever so slightly. It's not something I would actually call pain. I think it's a bit of an insult to proper pain to cause it that. But if you take away the narrative, that's pretty much all that's happened. And when you actually feel it, all you feel is a vague throbbing. There's no actual discomfort. So you cut away 90-95% of the narrative and all the stories you're telling yourself at great speed with great passion and emotion and so on. Take away all that and there's not much pain at all. So I don't think you can. I don't think that you can apply that to all painful situations.
Sure,
but it's quite a cute little example of how you can decatastrophize a situation.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
And so I think there's all of these things. There's so many unexpected gifts. I think if at the start of my meditation journey, if you'd have said to me, first if you'd said to me where it started, I would have started at a completely different point. I would have started with the diabetes and not taken it back any further.
Yeah.
But I would also have said that I everything was physical. I never had any kind of social anxiety particularly and so on. Because I was so on autopilot while I was having the social anxiety.
Yeah.
That didn't occur to me that's why I was downing so many drinks in any kind of given social situation, for instance.
Right, okay.
Now I have the self-compassion to be able to notice that now and to fold it in and it's a relief, it's good.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to find out stuff about yourself because it can only help.
Absolutely, yeah. So tell me, I'm mindful of time and I just want to be, make sure we all get the best of your knowledge. And, I think if you could give everyone just that pure piece of, sort of, if our words are gold, what would be the golden words you'd share with us?
Be kind.
Be kind.
Yeah.
That's perfect, isn't it?
I think that's all you need, really.
And that starts with you.
Yes, it starts with you. As I'm sure I've heard you say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
So you have to be kind to yourself, and that's not self-indulgent. That is actually the start of being kind to everybody else and everything else.
Yeah.
I think, but be kind, I think, is a good start. Yeah. I talked to this lady once who said a Buddhist monk once said to her that everything you need to know about Buddhism can be written on the back of a postcard. Now, I'm not a Buddhist, but I am attracted to the simplicity of that. And, be kind.
Yeah. And that's the loveliness, isn't it? Because we like the gymnastics of the mind, don't we? So if we can make it very simple and feel it.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a big fan of the Zen beginner's mind concept, really, where you just try and be like a beginner every time you do something. That also takes away from this kind of, hey, look at me, I'm cool, I'm sort of, you know, I can stretch more in yoga than you, or I'm more mindful than you, or whatever. All of which is incredibly counterproductive. We're all just kind of like modelling our way through, really, aren't we? And
absolutely. And the beginner mind brings us all those attitudinal states of the child. You know, the curiosity, the wonder, the amazement, the excitement,
and takes the pressure off. Yeah,
absolutely, because we haven't labelled it yet. We haven't decided it's got to be a particular way. So
yeah, everything's liquid. That hasn't become solid yet.
Yeah, beautiful.
And that's a state always worth returning to, I would suggest.
Yeah. Now tell me, just before we finish up here, got a lot of people listening local to Brighton. How can they get on one of your courses? What can they do? You know, how can they learn more about what you're teaching?
Okay, yeah, well, the website for Brighton is brightonmindfulnesscentre.com.
Yeah.
And you can, on that we have an online course, and there are one-to-one sessions available, mindfulness sessions, and there's other stuff as well, which escapes me a little bit, because we're also just sort of putting together a new thing, which is another website called STILLNOW.co.uk,
Right, okay.
and that's going to be a less kind of localised affair, and so this is going to have stuff like guided meditation packs, and just sort of general kind of multimedia things that are available, all aimed at helping people develop better life skills, really, but not restricted to mindfulness.
Okay.
I do sort of feel that the liquidity that we were just talking about necessitates not being tied to other people's idea of what stuff is. I think any kind of skills, you know, anything goes, really.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
Cool.
Anything goes at stillnow.co.uk.
Yeah.
Well, hear the TV advert already.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's a great place for us to finish up here. Just delighted to have you talk to us, and
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.